line up necessarily with what I'm saying. They're just kind of background photos. And as I also say that, my camera was stolen once, and again twice, the second camera I got, and my computer crashed while I was there. So the photos I have are kind of minimal. They're actually pictures that other people took and sent to me. So that's actually why I made most of them. So I guess I'll just start. People keep asking me, so how was it? And I can't tell you how many times I get that. But where were you again? And how was it? I don't always know how to answer that. Because it was 7 months of my life. And it's hard to ask you, well, how was the last 7 months of your life? How was it? It's like, well, every day was a little different. There were birthdays, there were holidays, there were trips, I made friends. There were hard times, I went to the doctor sometimes, there was a lot of stuff that happened. And not only that, I was in a foreign country and was speaking a different language and had a whole new sense of community. I had to find friends, I had to find a sense of purpose, I needed to figure out how my spirituality fit into it all. I also had to figure out how I was going to help. When I first got there, I was given a little tour of the city and said, okay, you're going to go to Mosoj Yan. And I think, okay, well, what am I going to do at Mosoj Yan? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, I guess I'll figure that out. He said, well, then I met the director of Mosoj Yan. He said, I told him that I was a teacher. I was a pre-K teacher before this trip. And he's like, oh, then you should go work with the girls. They need help with their schooling because each girl has a different education background, so they need a lot of one-on-one help if they're being put into the school programs. Sure, okay. And there wasn't a lot of schoolwork going on at the house, and I wasn't really sure what to do. No, I was helping with homework, but it still just kind of felt like a babysitter or a tutor or maybe a big sister. And it wasn't a real solid guidelines. Like, here's your job description, here's what you're going to do. You're going to clock in, you're going to clock out. So it's like, well, you can come whenever you want, you can leave whenever you want. These are all the girls, these are all their names, this is how old they are. Okay. So at the beginning, I was twiddling my thumbs a lot because I didn't want to intervene. I didn't want to put any pressure on anybody to tell me their story. I felt so tall and so blonde, and my accent was so bad that I just kind of wanted to just sit there and kind of watch them and not really impose too much. And eventually things just started to happen. I started talking with the girls, I started talking with people. They're at Mosoj Yan at the albergue is how they say it, which means shelter, but we would call it a safe house. All the girls there kind of came from vulnerable situations. Most of them were sexually abused. Most of the abusers were their family members. Some of them were kidnapped and trafficked. Some of them were homeless and found in the streets. But all of them were in very, very vulnerable situations, and they either found Mosoj Yan. Some of their stories were, like an example is, one girl was living with her sister and her mom. They were very poor, and her mom died, and her sister lived with her boyfriend, and she was just left. There was no family, there was nowhere to go, so she was literally starving on the streets. And Mosoj Yan, some workers, volunteers were out in the plaza, and they're handing out candy and talking to people, and I don't know if they were advertising an event or just trying to get known in the community. But she came up to them and she goes, do you have any food? I'm really hungry. And that's how that conversation started. Now she's been at Mosoj Yan now for almost over a year, and now she is, as I was leaving, she was transitioning out. And when they transition out, it means they've found a job, or they found a family to kind of adopt them, but it's more like a nanny position or a housekeeper who lives there. she had found a family, and she was working for them, so she'd still come on back on the weekends, or she'd have weeks off, and she'd still stay in Mosoj Yan and go and visit the family, and it's a huge process for them to become independent. So as I was hearing people's stories and talking to people, my mind started racing. I'd get home and just think like, what am I doing here? What can I give them? What use am I? Like, why? What do they have to learn from me? I'm learning so much more. And I just started to think, okay, well, what am I good at? What can I teach them? And I've been a swim instructor for 10 years and a swimmer for 20 now. And so I thought, well, maybe I can teach them how to swim. I don't know. I found a pool within like 4 days of being in the country and was already swimming every morning. It was already part of my routine. So the girls would ask me, my hair is wet. Do you go to the pool today? I was like, yeah. And then I'd learn. None of them have ever been in a pool. None of them have ever been swimming. And so I started asking people who worked there, do you know how to swim? Nope. And then I started asking friends, Bolivian friends, do you know how to swim? Nope. I'm like, wow. Okay, so then I started asking them, came back to the girls, like, would you want to come with me someday? And they're like, that would be so cool. I'm like, but I don't have a swimsuit. I was like, well, we can figure that out. I don't know. We'll figure that out. So then I think I was cutting potatoes in the kitchen with Tommy. She was the head mentor who worked there. She taught them how to cook and clean, and she actually was someone who was in Mosoj Yan herself with her child and grew up. Now she works there. And we were just in the kitchen talking, and I was like, so, she was so sweet. She was telling me how much she loved me. Thank you for coming. Like, you're doing so much. And I felt like I was doing nothing. So I said, really? Well, that's so sweet. Like, I love you guys too. But I was thinking of doing something more. Like, what about swimming? And I was just like, this is how she reacted. And she's like, that would be great. But we don't have any money. I was like, okay, great. Okay, I'll figure that out. So then I went to the pool I was swimming at, and it's a small pool. The owner was there every morning swimming his laps from 6 to 7 a.m. So I just showed up right at 7 right before he got out of the pool. I was like, hey, can I talk to you? And I told him what I was doing, who the population I was working with, and said, I was thinking of teaching them swim lessons, and I would be the teacher. How much would you charge me to let them use this pool? And he kind of thought about it and sat down and he was like, well, I can give you this rate. It all happened within those like 10 minutes of sitting down. There was no paperwork. There was no, let me make some phone calls, get back to you in a week. It was like, yeah, okay, I'll give you this price. And we wrote it all down. And it was a decent price. It was good. And he said he could have the pool, we could have the pool to ourselves. Between 9 and 10, there'd be no one else there. I think that's great because the girls are probably scared anyway. So then I went back to Hermano, who is the director of this state house, and said, this is my idea, this is how much money it would cost, what do you think? And he goes, it's great, we still have no money. I was like, oh, okay, I'll figure that out too. So I was volunteering through Sustainable Bolivia. It's kind of like, I see it as a group of houses where volunteers live in the houses and you're paying a lot of money to live in these houses. But with the money that you're paying, you also get a mini grant every month to donate to the place of volunteering. So the first few months I used the mini grant to pay for going into the pool. And girls were just wearing like hand-me-down bikinis and kind of like falling out because they weren't the right size. But they loved it, and they were actually learning, and it was going really well. And then I started feeling bad again. I was like, oh my God, I'm having so much fun, but I'm going to leave soon. And what's going to happen with the swimming, and who's going to teach, and what's going to happen? So then I talked to the pool director again and said, do you think I could get a Bolivian to help me teach? And I didn't tell him this, so I continued. I just said, because I'm Spanish, like, she should probably be in the pool with us. And he said, yeah. So we got her in, and then I was thinking, I don't know why I thought this, but I was just like, oh, she's going to volunteer. And then he's like, no, she's going to need to be paid like double because she's only coming in for 1 hour. And I was like, okay, we can do that. And in reality, it was like $1 an hour. I mean, it's not much. For us it wasn't much. So she got involved, and then my mind started racing again, and I was like, okay, how am I going to keep paying for this? And then I don't really know how I thought of this. I don't remember, but I came up with the swim-a-thon, which I'm sure most of you have heard about. And with the swim-a-thon, I just sent out tons of emails, tons of flyers, tons of sign-ups, and got a lot of feedback. I had swimmers at 3 different YMCA's in Seattle. I had swimmers in Arizona. I had a swimmer in Portland and her sister. I had a swimmer in Georgia, and there's one swimmer in Germany. So each swimmer represented, they are all raising their own funds. So they're sending out the flyers, they were sending out sign-up sheets, they were finding their own pledges. So every swimmer calculated their laps or just flat donations. So I did my own at the same, we all did it on the same weekend. And my goal was to get $1,500 back. And the $1,500 would pay for 1 year of swimming lessons, the full time, and the swim instructor. And I got $4,300 back. So I was so excited, and the girls had no idea because it was very confusing to them, like volunteering, all of it was very confusing. But all they understood was like, you're going to keep swimming for 2 more years. And they're like, what? And they're like, I probably won't be here in 2 years. And I was like, that's good too. So with the extra money, I was actually able to get them all new swimsuits, like polyester nice swimsuits that aren't going to rip or tear or fade in the chlorine. I got them all caps and goggles, and now it has turned into a rite of passage. When you enter Mosoj Yan, you get a swimsuit, you get a cap, you get goggles. And during that whole process, of course, I was in the back of my mind, am I doing this just because I love swimming? Am I doing this just because I feel like I need to be productive with my time? But I thought about more and more and through talking and praying about it. I think what these girls are doing, their lives are really hard. And so they're seeing psychologists and counselors every day. They're living in very small rooms with bunk beds with other teenagers who are also having problems. They're missing their family members. And on top of all that, they're learning how to cook and how to clean and how to raise their children. And so I thought, this is a great way, it's therapeutic for them to be in the water, to get out of the house and something besides church or school, the only times they left. To go do something fun, but also something they can get better at every time they go. And somewhere where it feels it's a safe space, there's no one else there. And I also thought it was kind of great getting them all into swimsuits and kind of, I mean, that's hard as any teenager, but if you have scars, that's even harder. And if you're getting in front of people and letting yourself be vulnerable in the water and prove, like, I'm really scared to put my face in the water. And then the next week, like, I'm ready to try it. And we'd always have lunch afterwards. And it was so cool. At lunch sometimes they'd be telling, because we do half of them on a Tuesday and half of them on a Thursday. So they'd be like, we learned how to dive today. And then they're all joking, like, yeah, but you actually belly flopped. And, you know, like, they're all, it was great. So I think that's a big chunk of what I did there, but that really wasn't a lot of my time. I also spent time, if you saw like little pictures for these, I ended up connecting with a lot of other volunteers through the Sustainable Bolivia House. And I talked about these girls nonstop. And I was infuriated by their lives. I was infuriated by the lack of support they have. The machismo culture made me so angry. But it also motivated me to get up and to talk about them and to seek who else would help. So I made friends with an artist, and I also made friends with a dancer. So So I was talking about doing like some sort of like mural with them. And then I was talking to artists about it. Would you maybe want to help me? And we did some brainstorming, and she's like, I think it'd be great to do self-portraits with each one of them, where they have to look in the mirror and face their face and paint. And so we did that. And then we hooked in another friend who is a dancer, and she's like, I do dance therapy. It's getting comfortable with your body and being in front of people. So we incorporated that. This was around November, December. So they were coming over, and I really wasn't doing anything. I was like taking pictures and kind of just managing the group because some girls were a little tough to handle. So while downstairs half of them were painting, upstairs the other half were dancing, and that was going on for a few weeks. And then we decided we wanted to celebrate everything they worked on. We found an art studio. We went to a few trying to ask if you would host the girls. Like, we could just put up their paintings, they'll do a little dance, and people can come celebrate them, and that's it. That's all we want, but we don't want to pay you. So it took a while, but we found an art studio that was willing to host us, and we set up the paintings, we set up lights. Girls loved it. We got a little bit dressed up, and they performed a dance sequence. And this is there. That was at it. That was at the event. And they all had their paintings there. How else? Also, this is brand new information. Not many people, I haven't told very many people this. Also, while I was there were two friends of mine, one from Germany, one from Holland, Belgium. And they didn't want to give their mini grant to the people they were working for. Because they're like, they have money, they're doing fine. We want to help someone else. So can we give our mini grant to Mosoj Yan? I was like, yeah? So what they did, they came in and they were meeting, while I was still there, they were meeting the girls and meeting the director. And now they have solar panels and hot water. So that's exciting. This is the show. This is at the art studio. That's all they're painting. Yeah. I don't know what else I can say. I can say at the first, I was never planning on going to Bolivia. This was never, I had never even thought about it. But then this email popped up in my inbox and it says, we're looking for this, this, and this. And I was like, okay. So I'm going to apply to that. And I applied and I was very excited. I was like, this is going to be so exciting. And then it started to sink in like, oh my God, I have to quit my job. Oh my God, I'm going to get my heart broken. Oh my God, I'm going to come back and not know what to do with my life. And so I was like, no, this is not for me. Like, I was finally feeling in a place very comfortable and solid with my job, my living situation, my cat. And God has a funny way of kind of just pushing you, kind of, leading you to a better choice, I should say. It's not supposed to be easy all the time. And what I had was a pretty easy life before. And things just kind of were falling into place for me to go, and I was following the Spirit. Like, first thing, my cat died. That was sad, but then it was a relief. Now I don't have to find someone to take care of my cat. I can go wherever I want. Then people in my house were getting married and moving away, so I was like, well, who am I going to live with? Then my job was like, you should go to Bolivia, and then call us when you get back. I was like, okay, so everyone wants me to go to Bolivia. And I went, and I was very, very scared, and very, very hesitant. I was scared because I knew that I would be right where I am today, so confused and so shattered. But I felt like it was the right thing to do. I felt like I was following God's signals, and I was just going to trust. And I think the best way to describe, where I am right now is, I don't want you to raise hands, but I'm sure there's some people here who have a tattoo or know someone who has a tattoo. And I feel like after you get that tattoo, it's really raw. It hurts, but it's exciting. And there's a little scab on it. You have to wait for it to heal for a long time. And that's how I feel right now. I feel very raw. And and I feel very emotional about some of the people I met there. I feel emotional about the lack of opportunities they have there. I feel emotional about coming back and having first world problems. At the same time, it's also very beautiful and it's a work in progress. And I think I have some sort of Bolivian tattoo that I can't see it yet, it's not done. I don't know what it's gonna look like. I can't even say what it's a picture of. But right now I'm still pretty fresh. But I'm still so thankful, and my world is turned upside down right now, and I'm feeling a little crazy. But I'm really thankful for it all. I really think these girls have no idea how they judge my life. And I'd also like to say that I'm still in contact with them. Some of my friends who still visit them, they have smartphones, and so they can get on their smartphone and give it to the girls, and then they can write me on like Skype or Facebook. I also have another friend who goes there almost weekly and takes pictures for me, sends them to me, and he also updates them on how I am. I'm also Facebook friends with the director, so he writes me sometimes. Oh, we went to the pool today, send pictures soon. I haven't seen any pictures of the pool yet. I don't expect to see those anytime soon because just how things work in Bolivia. They're a little bit slower. And also, there's something that I was hoping would be all finished by now so I could present it. But because things move slower in Bolivia, I'll just tell you about it, and then when I know about it, I'll tell you guys. So, as I was wrapping up my time there, I was talking with Tino, the director, and just saying, I was emotional about leaving. It's like, I only have a month left, and time is ticking, and he was always stressed about money, because other NGOs and other safe houses like this one have been shut down in Cochabamba. Because there's no money, there's no funding, the government's not supporting them, people in the communities aren't supporting them, because everyone's struggling. And so there's not really a culture of donating time, there's no volunteers, there's not a culture, these are volunteers, but as you can tell, they're not from Bolivia. There's not a culture of donating a little bit of your money or supporting the local NGO, even if you believe in it. I met so many people who believe in it, they just can't. So he's very worried about keeping this Mosoj Yan alive. It's like, we only have room for 14 girls, but with all these shutting down, like there's more girls who need to move in here. We don't have the space or the money. And I said, well, how much does it cost? If you don't mind me asking, to house a girl here. He goes, well, it'd probably be between $100 and $150 a year for one girl. And I was like, what? Okay, we can work with this. So then we started talking, and I said, well, what if we did like some sort of sponsorship program? And I know so many people who could easily donate $100 a year to know that girls who really, really need it, who have no family, can come into this house and then graduate and be able to take care of their children and be independent women. And I think we'd probably be able to open more. I think. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But just counting the people who have nodded their head when I talk about this, like, yeah, I'd do it. It's more than 14. So, still waiting for Tino to finish that up. But when that's up, I will translate it, and it'll start by talking about how the economic situation is in Bolivia and why it's critical that help comes from outside of Bolivia, because I feel like that's one of the most common issues when you're donating to another country. People say, well, why don't you just donate in Seattle? Isn't there tons of things to do in Seattle? Yes, but we can choose where it goes. And also, there's no one there donating to them, unless there's people like me coming out of the country and being like, please donate to them. Please draw your focus to them. They're really important to me. So he's gonna talk about the economic situation, and then we'll talk about how much it costs to host a child or sponsor a child, and then there would be a direct correlation. You would get updates from the child, you would see pictures of them with their new books, and there could be a relationship there. So it's not, you see exactly where your money's going and exactly who you're helping, and you would be able to keep that contact. So hopefully this will be coming soon. He's literally on my last day. He leaned over, Breanne, it's so good having you here. I'm almost done. I just have to put in like a few like phone numbers and then I'll be done. I was like, okay, great. I was like, you have my email, you can just send it to me like tonight. He's like, okay, cool. And it's been like almost 2 months. And I emailed him. He goes, yeah, I just have a few phone numbers. I'll get it to you. I'm like, okay. I'm just gonna keep asking. Eventually it'll happen. So I don't know how much there is to say, except that it was so hard being there. But at the same time, it was so wonderful. And it was so gut-wrenching, painful to leave. It was so hard to get on that plane and be like, see you later, I'll see you on Facebook. And it's so hard being back and trying to explain that to people. Because it's not, I wasn't in Cancun, I wasn't on a vacation. And I also had huge transformative life experiences packed into just 7 months. Where people's updates here tend to be like, oh, I had a baby, or I got married. These are great things, but they're so different, it's hard to find the connection. So I really thank you guys for listening. And if you guys have any questions you want to ask me, maybe, I don't know if any pictures didn't make sense. This is my birthday. The tradition is to smash an egg on their head, throw flour on them, and they call it that's your cake. So they thought that was funny. I thought it was a little mean. This was church. The girls, I found a Protestant church there, which was rare. And this was on Christmas Eve, and the girls actually came with me to that. This lady right here who's getting hugged, she was the artist who helped them with the paintings. And she had she celebrated her 50th birthday in Bolivia and was really kind of bummed. She didn't really have much of a community there, so we surprised her. And the girls made a cake, and the girls decorated. And, this was really exciting for everybody. Susie, if you go back more, was the love of my life. She was amazing. Her mom is Julia, and she was very quiet, soft-spoken. You could see it in her eyes. There was so much pain behind her. Her daughter, so Julia is 17 right now, and Susie's 2. And Susie is a product of Julia's dad. And so when Julia stood up for herself and said, I'm pregnant, they just told her, well, you're going to have to abort that and just keep on going. And she didn't believe that. So she's like, I'm having this baby. And she had to leave her whole family and was completely ridiculed and pushed away. So she has, her only family is Susie. And I've worked with a lot of kids. I've been a nanny and a swim instructor forever and a pre-K teacher. And I remember holding her and looking at Julia and like, you have the sweetest daughter ever. You are so lucky. I want to take her. And Julia was like, no, that is my gift from God. And when she said that, I was like, oh my God. If you can see that when you see her, that is a gift, and that is how you got out of that horrible situation. She obviously had very bad days. Susie is not a fan of men. They're working on that. But there's reasons. There's reasons for that. This is actually a cool story. This lady right here, she was a chaplain at CLU while I was there. And now she's volunteering in Bolivia. So while I was there, she was my spiritual director.
Was that a coincidence? Or?
That was a coincidence. Yeah. I got her email from other people at CLU that I talked to, like, oh, do you know Kathy's down there? I was like, no. So we emailed for a while, and then she emailed me and was like, do you want spiritual direction by any chance? I have free time. I was like, oh my God, I would love that. And this was the Haley over here is one who taught dance. And she actually went on to copy me and she hired a dance instructor and did a huge fundraiser, and now has left the country. Actually, she just came back like a week ago. And now there's a dance program where she was at. And she also made sure, she came over with me and made sure that the girls can go to this dance program if she funds it, which she did, for free. So the girls in Mosoj Yan will be able to walk, I think it's just a few blocks, and go learn how to dance for free. This is another project I got involved with at a Montessori school. They were building a greenhouse. They made it all out of these plastic bottles, and they needed help painting. They had like 2 weeks, and they wanted to we want this big mural right here. And I was like, so when do you want this done? In like 2 weeks. Okay. So they decided they wanted, I don't know, so like I said, all the photos didn't get onto this slideshow. There's tons more. This might be the only glimpse you have of the picture, I think. But there's 2 walls that we ended up doing from the Lorax. That had a quote that said, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better.